then you are agreeing to you consent to being recorded, and by District 4's option, but being shared on YouTube. So I would ask you to please mute yourself and turn off your camera. You'll have an opportunity to unmute and turn on your cameras at the very end, so you can express gratitude to our panelists that we have here. Now, in order to enable Zoom's hide non-video participant setting, it's described here on the chat. For most platforms, you click on the arrow next to Start Video, the button in the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom window. This will open the video settings. You'll check Hide Non-Video Participants checkbox. Now, during this session, you will have an opportunity to ask questions via the public chat, and you'll limit all your comments in the public chat, please, to those questions that you have for our panelists and responses to questions that I or a panelist may ask. Now, I already see something. There's a question about the session on power dynamics, or the question on whatever the additional session. That's in the other Zoom. Down at the bottom, you'll need to log out of this Zoom and go to the first Zoom link to get to the session on power dynamics and emotion on Zoom. So I am very privileged to have a wonderful team of panelists here to answer questions about pathways and their experiences. Wow, that's an old picture of me. We will have some chance to talk to all of these. I'm going to start out first. We have Gordiienko. Oh, can we show those? Actually, we can show the slide maybe while I go through. That'd be great. We have Gordiienko. Kat is a member of San Francisco Downtown Toastmasters. She is a data scientist turned startup founder, and she cares very deeply about using technology to improve people's lives. Now, prior first she was really into real estate and fintech. That's been her focus for the past 2 years. And prior to that, she used data to tell stories for different companies in Silicon Valley. And she still finds it fascinating that after years of studying theories and rational decision making, that it's really proven that people are driven by their emotions, and those emotions are affected by the messages that they hear. And I'm sure that's something that she has honed in on while going through her first path. So we'll hear more about that. So welcome, Kat. Wave to us. Our second panelist is Joshua Montgomery. Joshua is president of San Francisco International Airport's corporate club called Plain Talk Toastmasters. He's been a Toastmaster since October 2017. He has a passion for inspiring others to be motivated, which is what he's completing the motivational strategies path, one that I'm doing myself as well right now. Joshua has participated in many Toastmasters contests. He's ranked second place in the Area B5 contest level for international speech and table topics. Joshua also spreads his joy as a worship leader at the University AME Zion Church in Palo Alto, California, and he continues to use his skills that he's learned through pathways in everyday life. So welcome, Joshua. Yay. Our third panelist is Henry Miller. Henry has been a member of Toastmasters for over 23 years. He's a member of Point of Order Toastmasters and in District 4 and 4 different clubs in District 101. He is a past district governor. He was one of the first people he was on the District 4 Pathways Guides when Pathways was first introduced to District 4. And he went on to be the very first Toastmaster in District 101 to receive his Pathways Distinguished Toastmaster, or DTM. And I believe he is wearing his medal here today. So congratulations on that. Now, in addition to Pathways, Henry has a passion for competing. He was District 101's Humorous Speech Contest champion in 2017. and he's represented District 4 3 different times in either the regional or now called the semifinals levels of the World Champion of Public Speaking. So welcome, Henry. Finally, on our panel tonight, we have Tim Carlisle, distinguished Toastmaster Timothy Carlisle. He is our current program quality director. He belongs to multiple clubs in District 4, 57, and maybe elsewhere. And he includes at least one club with each of us on this panel. He also has completed some pathways paths, but he doesn't talk numbers. I will do an editorialized comment here. He has finished, I think, all of them, if not most of them, for sure. Now, he feels like he has greatly benefited from Toastmasters, especially through the pathways experience from the leadership side and the communications perspective. So welcome, Tim, and welcome to all of our panelists. Now, how we're going to do this, maybe we could take down the slide so our panelists can show up on your screens. We have, Kat Gordiienko is also the president of San Francisco Downtown Toastmasters. Great, we've got some club leaders here in the house today, so fantastic. Now, how we're going to do this today is I am going to, all of our panelists, they are excited to be here to answer your questions that are thrown their way. And to get this started, I'll begin by asking a few questions, and I'll direct it to one of our panelists. But of course, if another panelist feels like they want to chime in after the answer, I'll ask them to speak up briefly on that. Now, I also encourage audience participation in this by asking questions in the chat. So how we'll do this, you just type in your questions and we will try to get there. If it gets to the point we have too many questions, I will save those questions at the end and we'll make sure to get back to you through probably, I'll put an email in there that we can all answer, that you can correspond with me to get the answers to your questions. So we are ready to get started. I am going to start with, I'll ask my first question to Kat. Now, many people join Toastmasters to find their voice. And one thing that you mentioned is that people are really influenced by emotions and the stories that they hear. So my question is, how has Pathways helped you share your voice?
Thank you very much for an amazing question, Katherine, and thank you for having all of us here on the panel. I am honored to be amongst such distinguished Toastmasters and experienced speakers. I myself am fairly new to Toastmasters as of a year and a half ago, and I just finished my first Pathways on innovative planning, and I'm actually in the middle of reflecting, so this is very, very timely. To your question about sharing my voice, one of my personal goals for 2020 that I wrote down in the beginning of the year was to share my voice. I believe that all of us have a unique perspective on anything and everything based on the experiences that we've been through in our lives. And generally people are hardwired for connection. So by not sharing, we're missing out on a lot of opportunities to connect with others and live our lives to the fullest. And it relates to both personal and professional lives together. So when I joined Toastmaster and signed up for my first Pathways project, I kind of started safe. In my first icebreaker speech, of course, I covered some of the personal topics and where I come from and some of the experiences that I've been through. But then subsequent presentations were more theoretical. And the feedback I got from my club members was, it's all great. It's all great to hear the theory behind it. For example, I prepared a speech on leadership styles, and I read this book about leadership methods and different styles that people have. And I summarized this book in my presentation. So my club members gave me feedback that it's all great to hear, but where is Kat behind it? What are some personal stories you can share? What are your personal experiences and learnings that you can give to us? And I realized that personal stories is the juice of the presentation. It's what people connect with, and that's how people get to know you. So little by little, I started putting in some of the personal examples and experiences that I had. And my presentation on research and presenting, I talked about my meditation retreat of 10 days. And as I wrote the presentation, and after presenting it to my club, I got brave enough to post an article about it on LinkedIn. I thought that I would be judged and people will criticize me for different experiences or some of the insights that I've uncovered. But everybody was so supportive that it only made me want to open up and share more. And sharing is very humbling. It always makes me think of Brene Brown, who talks about daring greatly and gifts of imperfection. And I realized that by sharing not only successes, but failures is where people find the most value and lessons learned. So then my next speech was about sense of humor, and I talked about my best friend. She's a comedian and she's very, very funny, at least to me. And I debated for a long time whether I share that article with my larger LinkedIn network or not. But then I realized that in the middle of COVID pandemic, anybody would appreciate a little bit of humor. And I eventually posted that article as well, and people were very happy to read and asked for more. I eventually started a blog, and the blog is related to my side project that I'm doing with my father. We're building a guest house. And again, I started it with zero knowledge and started learning about California building code. And I was afraid that some of the more experienced builders would read it and would criticize me for doing some unconventional things. But instead of that, I actually have a lot of fellow homeowners reach out to me now for advice and some brainstorming and just to connect and share experiences. So I realized that your worst self-critic is you yourself, and people actually want to know more. And by sharing little by little, you eventually build up on that and are brave enough to share more. So that is my journey with Pathways and learning to share more of personal experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Do you have other suggestions on the finding your voice? All right. All right. I have a second question, and this one is going to be for, I'll ask Henry this question. What would you say to somebody who is reluctant to get started on Pathways? Now, we recently changed our educational system where Pathways is the only way to create goals for your club. It is our educational system now, but there's some people that are just reluctant to get started, especially if they're rarely used to the old previous education program. Could you share a little bit about your journey to inspire people to want to continue on with this new educational program? Don't forget to unmute. Oh, you'll need to unmute, Henry.
Yep. Finding my voice. Did you find my voice?
We found your voice, yes.
Yes, this has been quite a problem for many clubs and for many Toastmasters. One of the questions I always ask those members, especially the older Toastmasters who are reluctant to embrace Pathways. What is the fear? What is the fear? And the opposite of fear is understanding. If you just take their hands and gently move them over to the portals and walk through with just one time, they open up and they see a whole new world. The program is not very different from the manuals. It is not. As a matter of fact, I found it to be much simpler. And I too believe that personal stories and humor is the currency of public speaking. And it gives you a lot of opportunities to tell your personal stories and to help you structure them in a professional manner. That is what I personally have found to be most helpful to me as someone who has been involved in Toastmasters for 23 years. Now, one of the complaints I've heard is an icebreaker. Am I going to start this program all over with an icebreaker? Sure. But when you look at how you structure an icebreaker, it opens up and you start questioning all the different areas of my life or your lives that you can, where you have broken the ice. You see a lot of opportunities for different speeches. Yesterday I attended a meeting, and a Toastmaster who has been involved in Toastmasters for more than 40 years gave his icebreaker. And he gave this icebreaker about his American wives, 3, which was very interesting. It gave us a whole new, he was originally from Australia and he came to the United States and fell in love, and that was one story. Then he spoke about how sailing, his passion for sailing. He wove that story into the icebreaker. So I think that if you are serious about speaking and not talking, because there's a big difference. If you're serious about speaking and you follow the program, take a few minutes and just read and develop your own system. One of the things I do when I start a path, I open up a word sheet and I cut and paste what I want to keep, what interests me, put it in a parking lot. And at the end of that lesson, I have a speech ready to go. And that has helped me complete the program much faster. One of the things I didn't want to do was sell something I didn't understand. So I'm on my 5th path right now, because I want to be able to sell something that I believe in. And I firmly believe in Pathways and its successes.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are thinking about how is Pathways really going to help me? And so I'm going to ask Joshua, how has Pathways helped you in your career?
Absolutely. Thank you, Katherine, for moderating, and special shout out to the panelists that I'm accompanying with. You guys are phenomenal. I love the experience that we have on the board and the point of views. Professionally, Pathways will do that for you. It will improve your speech, your organization, as well as your presentation skills. One thing for me that I take advantage of is using this opportunity for our clubs to practice my presentation that I'm gonna give to senior management or any other presentation that I'll be delivering at the airport. Working at the airport, I have a number of different presentations and projects going on. So having a place where I get to practice and prepare for my speech that I'm going to present, I deliver it at the club and also receive feedback from club members. And let me tell you, I have a phenomenal club, phenomenal members who provide phenomenal insight, especially being able to work with somebody who's familiar with the context of your presentation. So having that feedback is very valuable in the working environment. And also when I delivered that speech to senior management, I had a couple other Toastmaster members who was also in the room who were able to evaluate me at that moment, how I did, and give me more feedback. So really having a corporate club, you have a personal outside entity and involve your work life, how you work your members, but you get to see them on a personal level. And I think Kat and Henry, you guys kind of touched on their personal level a little bit too, because when you do give a speech or a presentation, you always want to connect to your audience. And I think having that personal aspect allows you to do that. I relate that to my Toastmasters experience, because dealing with Toastmasters, it allowed me to become more of a personal and revealing more of my personal aspect and emotions, because that's something I typically did not do. But when I do give speeches, especially on a contest level, that's kind of one of my areas of improvement or feedback, is being more personal and having that connection with the audience. So that's an area for me of improvement, but I appreciate Toastmasters allowing me to give me that feedback and keep me sharp in my speaking skills. Also, one that I mentioned was it allows you to let other coworkers kind of have an idea what you do at your job too. Because as you're seeing them, you get kind of used to seeing somebody in one certain point of view. And then with this opportunity, you get to know a little bit about what they do and their work at the airport. And for me, because I'm at the airport, but just other things that you get to do and get to see them outside of just one set point of view all the time. So with those two things, just having the presentation skills, to have practice and feedback from your club members, and just to have some more insight about what your other members do and being personally connected, I think it's a good way of having a corporate club and how that can better benefit you professionally moving out into development.
All right, thank you, Joshua. All right, so Kat, Henry, and Joshua, you've convinced me, although I'm okay, brand new person here to the Pathways, let's say. You've convinced me now I need to join Pathways. I'm ready to take that step. So Tim, how would you go about finding the path that's like, a lot of people are asking, how do I pick, like there's like 12, 13 different paths. How do I know which path is going to be right for me? And I'll ask that for Tim.
Thank you, Katherine, for being our moderator and the question. There's a few ways. One of the things I did when I became the program quality director right before that is I did a survey of all of District 4, and then I found out I wasn't supposed to do the survey I did for the Pathways discussion forum on Facebook. And what both survey results told me is 85 to 90% of people just want to choose the path that's right for them. What we did is we figured out a way to break down the Pathways program into a series of 26 2 to 3 minute explainer videos. They are all on the District 4 Toastmasters YouTube channel. You may see my Bitmoji that I had made so I didn't violate brand stuff in there. But more importantly, they're divided up so that each of the paths has a 2 to 3 minute introduction to each path. That way you can quickly look at it, make sure that it's what you're looking for, and it just lists the required projects for levels 3 through 5. There are separate videos for level 1 and level 2, as well as all of the electives. And it winds up, when you add in the Distinguished Toastmaster project, to be a series of 26 videos. It is not the end all. However, my realization is that we have people that read and we have people that watch videos. Both of them are good. Let's provide this as another tool in our Pathways arsenal to help people be able to learn and further engage in the Pathways program. Back to you, Katherine.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take this time to encourage our audience to ask questions that you have on Pathways. And while we're looking for some questions, I have one this is for the panel. And if you feel like you want to be the first to chime in, raise your hand and we'll let that happen. My question is, like, Pathways has different activities. There's electives and different types of speaking. And I was wondering what's something new that you have tried due to your adventure in Pathways, for better, lack of way to describe it. Due to Pathways, what's something new that you've done?
I can try and answer the question.
Great.
One of the elective projects or presentations that I had was about social media. Now, I myself am not big on social media. I try to stay away from it as much as possible in order to be focused at work. And I'm only on LinkedIn and a little bit on Facebook. So specifically for this Pathways project, I actually registered on Instagram. I researched TikTok, and I also registered on Snapchat just to find out how these different kinds of social media work. And while personally, I'm not convinced that I would use them for business, to promote a business as a marketing tool, I thought they were great. And if not for Pathways and that presentation that I elected, I don't think I would have tried and learned all these things that I know about social media.
Okay, Henry, I know you have tried something new.
Yes, I did. Actually, I wrote a blog. One of the projects in the first one I did, effective communication, was presentation mastery. I wrote a blog, and you can actually go to, I have over 100 postings on that blog since I started it. And a lot of the material in there, I have actually, once I complete a project in Pathways, I write a blog, not directly relevant to the topic, but it does, but with something that I feel can help my fellow Toastmasters. One of the things I've found is, getting back to the icebreaker. When you write an icebreaker, you tend to talk about yourself. I. One of the things I've done and focused on is to look at the written speech, and every sentence that contains I try to look for a way to change it around so it can relate to you. And that has helped me a lot with my speaking. Less I's, more U's. And even in the blog, you would notice it's available at henryomiller.com, henryomiller.com. And I would enjoy getting some of your feedback also. Thank you, Kat.
Thanks. Why don't you put that your blog into the chat as well, so that we can you can have more followers. All right, we've got a couple of comments in the chat already. One is more of a comment than a question, but it's often a question that comes up. It's kind of a stumbling block for some people, and that's the interface with Basecamp and the actual the Pathways interface. Like, what would be a good tip or trick to get around that you could? Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I'm going to tell you Pathways for people who don't like the Pathways interface. If that becomes challenging, if you go to the next to last item for every project, there's a place where you can say, print your project. You don't have to necessarily print it out, but it's in a PDF format. You could save that PDF format to your desktop and thus eliminate that part of the problem. And I realize, and Toastmasters International realizes, that we have some challenges with the interface. There are ways around that, in my belief, and it's just a practice thing. However, you know, when we've been interviewing international director candidates and other officers, that has been top of mind in one area that they're very concerned about. And I think that we'll be seeing some changes in that probably in time.
All right, thank you. Maybe I'll ask this next question out to Joshua or anybody else, because I'm curious how you picked your path, and especially for new members, they're on their very first path, they might just started Toastmasters. Did you just take the built-in questionnaire, or did you just dive into something? Like, what was your process, or what would you suggest for brand new members that are just maybe overwhelmed?
Yeah, so definitely for me, I kind of knew an idea of what I wanted to do. Me being a motivational speaker and aspiring to do things at my church, I kind of knew that track. For our club, something we do, which is something I would recommend for other clubs as well, is assigning a mentor for new persons coming on board. I had the pleasure and the honor of being mentored by the one and only Tim Carlisle on the phone on the panel right here. So having his advice when I came on board, he kind of introduced me to the different paths as well. So I had that as one, a mentor. Number two, having the prior kind of knowledge of what I wanted to do already, what I was looking for to get out of Pathways, and then having his guidance kind of helped me define what I really wanted. And then number three, it's just taking the base camp that's offered there with the questionnaire. You answer those few questions, and then it'll give you the top, I think top three, right? The top three paths to choose. So between those three options is kind of how to end up in my pathway for motivational strategies.
All right, thank you.
You know,
I'm not a panelist, but I'll just say I took the quiz. I knew in my mind what I was looking for and found as I was answering the questions, knew I wanted a path that was looking towards motivation. And so that's why I kind of gravitated towards that. But if you know what you want is your focus, that often is a good way to look. Henry, were you raising your hand? Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, I was. We all have a style of speaking, and we know what it is, what moves us, what we are passionate about. And we all, if you were a Toastmaster before the pathways was introduced, you have a number of speeches that you can recycle. Take a look at some of those speeches and see what your trend is. Look, even some of the evaluations you got, and that would often help you make a decision as to which path you can gravitate to.
I would just add one more thing too. If you don't know what path you want to choose, I mean, just go ahead and choose anyone and dive into it, because with the icebreaker in the first level is pretty much the general between all the paths. And then you have so many electives that kind of overlap within the pathways too that you can get out of it. So when you just dive into a path, it gets you started. And then you have your core electives with each pathway, but you also have different electives you can do throughout the pathway that are not specific to each particular path. So just dive in there.
I agree with both what Joshua and Henry have said. That's really, really helpful. You know, I was doing the pathways stuff before Engaging Humor came out, and when it came out, I figured I'd take a look at that and hang out at a Laugh Lovers Club over by my house, because sometimes I need to laugh Sunday nights. I also have decided we're going to put a Laugh Lovers type style club in San Francisco as well. So that's something we're working on, because humor in business presentations or to break up tense situations is really valuable. Henry, you can help write a blog for our District 411 blog if you like to.
All right, so let's say somebody dove into, just picked a path, and then they found out that this is not the path that they really wanted. The question is, what if you find out you don't want to be on the path that you first signed up for? What would be? Go ahead, Kat.
I do know that you get 30 days after you sign up for a path to change. We had a member who decided that they wanted to switch a path, and that was no problem. And to add to maybe a previous question about choosing a path, my experience was I also took a quiz, and innovative planning was what came up for me. And initially I was like, it sounds like project management. I've done, a ton of project management in my past life. Why would I do that? But I gave it a shot anyway. And it working out really, really great. And I also approached it from a standpoint that I want to do many different pathways. I want to be like 10. So it doesn't really matter what to start with. Just like what Joshua said, as long as you start, you make the path by walking, just start somewhere.
All right.
If I may add, as Yogi Berra once said, when you get to the fork in the road, you take it.
There you go.
Oh, right. Yankees.
So now that Toastmasters International has changed the way of creating DCP goals, how can we encourage our clubs to achieve their 6 educational goals this year? Program Quality Director Tim.
Yeah. So Pathways is all about making sure you take every opportunity to be successful. Okay, how many of you have done club officer training? Connect with your audience, question and answer. Those are 2 projects you can do. We're not required to do them in any specific order now until you want to complete each level in the path and so forth. How about getting asked to speak at work? I was asked to speak to a parents group about managing children's screen time. I may have borrowed a couple things from the candidate, from Aaron, who's competing in the World Championship of Public Speaking. But what I did do is tell them, exhibit the behavior you want your children to do. And that was a shocker for them. But I took one of my colleagues with me. They evaluated that speech. It was professionally speaking. It was a presentation, everything. It went about 30 to 45 minutes with question and answers throughout. When you're doing anything, I know Kat and Joshua have both spoken at different places. Get that evaluated. You know, when you're being a club officer, many times we get offered to do different things. You're doing a toast at a wedding, that's a social speech. Podcasting, blogging, I would have laughed you out of the building if you'd have told me 5 years ago. I would have done those, but I have done both and really enjoy it. All of those things, you know, whether you're an old dog wanting to learn new tricks or a younger person wanting to learn maybe old tricks, it's all good. And this can change everything. Look at managing online meetings. Is everyone in your club who's running the Zoom meeting getting credit for that project? How about every time you have someone that's doing table topics, are they doing the active listening project and being evaluated for being a table topics master? Those are the kind of things that when you have somebody getting started, they do table topics and a couple of those other things. By the time you get to levels 3 and 4, it's, I've got 1 or 2 speeches left. Yay. And then you can zip right up. You can knock out all 6 goals fairly quickly with 2 to 3 people that are committed. Back to you, Catherine.
In addition, we want to encourage all of our members to work, not just the 2 or 3 people, but definitely all of our members to continue to work, especially for our club presidents and VPs here. That's your goal. We have a question here. Oh yeah, go ahead, please, Josh.
I was just going to add one quick thing. Free money. It's free. Get your credit. I'm going to tell you what, it makes a difference when you have an extra $50 in your account when you can get these free pins and you can get those awards and reward your teammates, reward your members. Get that free money and go buy something and then go ahead and reward your members. That's the biggest benefit right there. It's just the free money. Go ahead and get your credit.
Recognition is really important, I think.
And remember, Pathways is like a funnel, okay? You start out, maybe you have 8 people that start and finish level 1. Out of those 8, maybe 4 finish level 2. Maybe 2 finish level 3, and a couple crazy people do more, and that's okay. But the next year, those 4 people that finished level 1, maybe they also finish level 2 that year, and so forth and so on. You just fill up the hopper, and then those levels and those points just pop right out. It works really well.
Okay. Henry, were you going to add to that?
Yes, I wanted to add one of the things we must remember is that when you achieve your personal goals, the club benefits. And the district will then benefit. So whatever you do, wherever you do it, take the credit. And the easiest way to help you is to go to the evaluation section of the project, fill it out, and mail it out to 2 or 3 members of your club. Sometimes, you know, you may not be happy with the person who you were assigned to. So send it off to someone who you trust, and you will find that you would benefit a lot more. At the end of the project, I usually take the 3 evaluations I received and look at and compare them. And I have found they have benefited me quite a lot.
Great. Thank you for mentioning that, because I have 2 things to say. First, we have about 5 more minutes. Second, I'm glad you brought up the evaluation, because we did have a comment or question in our chat here about how you deal with matching evaluators and speakers. There's a level difference for some people that feel like it's hard to make that an ideal situation. But when you do what Henry said, is take out and mail it out to multiple people, you can get additional feedback. Does somebody have another suggestion on how you match evaluators and speakers to make that most beneficial in clubs?
One thing is if you're giving the an evaluation feedback where you gave a speech, get feedback, and give another one, probably you want to pick somebody who was at least at the first speech, if not maybe the same evaluator. That's up to you. Another thing that I think is really helpful is to rotate your evaluators around so that the same person's not evaluating you every time. And there is not a person here that I think, with exception maybe Henry, who has given me feedback on a regular basis. And you know what? That's how we learn. That's how we grow. And that's what will make you better.
Thank you for that. We have a technical question here, and that's if you spoke outside of Toastmasters and that event got recorded, could you have the recorded speech evaluated by a Toastmaster and get credit for a project? And that's not one I'm not sure I know the answer to, but Henry, it looks like, hey, yeah, go ahead, Henry.
Well, I always remember the story when I first joined, well, some time ago, I went to a funeral. It was a Toastmaster, and he handed me a book and asked me if I would evaluate his eulogy. It was the funeral for his father, and I was stunned. But that I remembered that, and it left such an indelible impression on me. I feel that every time you speak, it should be evaluated. Every time you speak. So if you go to a private ceremony, a funeral, a wedding, whatever it is, okay, if you bring your evaluation form, it doesn't have to be recorded. Bring your evaluation form. And we evaluate everyone. We evaluate politicians, we evaluate priests, we evaluate them. Get somebody to evaluate what they saw, what they heard, what they felt, and you have a valid evaluation to take the credit. I often give the same speech 2 or 3 times, so eventually you would have completed the project that you are looking for credit for.
Thank you for that. Hey, Tim, real quickly, and then I want to do a quick question for everybody. Yeah, before we hang.
Yes. Many times deck stuff that I talk about at the deck meeting is done in evaluation and feedback. I socialize it so that when I'm ready to go, I give my very, very best. I think that's really key.
Great, thank you. All right, so because we are getting to that ending hour, I'm going to ask you for like a 30-second, 20 to 30-second answer to this, and I'll let you think for a second. Is what is something that you've been surprised by through Pathways? Something that either has benefited you the most or what you've been most happy to experience through Pathways. Just surprised you that you didn't expect. Yeah, Joshua.
Muted.
Yeah, I was surprised how beneficial it was. I didn't think I was actually going to stay dedicated to the pathway, but it's actually easier than I thought. I like once you get in and dive into the pathway, I like the structure of the speeches and how it does help outline your speech, especially for that particular topic. And I enjoyed the different electives and the topics about my pathway. So I was actually surprised at the layout and how beneficial it was going to be for me, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tim?
360-degree evaluations. I have done that with my homeowners association board, the submarine veterans, different Toastmasters projects. And it was always a very humbling experience because it's not the people that say all the rah-rah things. It's the people, I didn't like this or that. I want to go talk to those people and understand. I mean, I'm not upset about it. I just want to learn, because if I can learn how to reach more people, that makes me more effective as a speaker and a leader. Done.
All right, Kat.
I was surprised to learn that you can structure any speech, even the most technical one, to be relevant to the entire audience. I remember a speech I gave about my construction experience, and I wanted to make it relevant to the club. And the lessons that I learned were about the team. You need to make sure the team that's behind you is strong enough and you can trust, and you learn most of the unknowns before you start on the project. And it was relevant to everybody. And I do see that other members of our club delivering very technical speeches about their jobs also do the same. So that's really great. Thank you.
Right. Henry?
The value of repetition, repeating the same things over and over, gives you confidence. And I think that that is one of the values that I have taken away from the program. There's nothing new under the sun, but sometimes you need to be reminded by doing the projects and looking at how they repeat themselves, you benefit a lot and you gain more confidence.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm looking at the clock here and we are getting close to our end time. There's an excellent question about your favorite electives. If you want to type in your favorite electives that you've had into the chat. My personal one, it's not an elective, but it's one I'm in the process of doing right now. And it's keeping a journal for 2 weeks about my emotions. And that has been a quite eye-opening experience for me. If you have a favorite elective, go ahead and type it into the chat. I'm going to take note of any other additional questions that we have. My personal email is going, my Toastmasters email is going into the chat. If you would like to reach out to me to get these answers, I will make sure to answer those. Please reach out to that email. You could also email quality@d4tm.org. I'd like to offer a very sincere thank you to our 4 panelists, Joshua Montgomery, Tim Carlisle, Kat Gordiienko, and Henry Miller. I have really enjoyed having this conversation with you and sharing your ideas about pathways. There will be a feedback link that I hope is going to be put into the chat very soon, and to give us your thoughts on the program, what you thought. And now what I would invite you to do is to unmute yourselves, turn on your camera, and thank our fantastic panelists. If you are not able to do that, please, thank you so much for being here. If you would, the next event, you'll need to hop over into the other Zoom meeting, and that's for the town hall. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you, panelists.
Who's in the chat now?
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it.
Same.
Hey, thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Great job.
Fantastic job, Catherine.
Thanks. It was fun.
Okay.
Now I can get evaluated for leading a panel for pathways. Feedback form is now inside the chat, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.